Shannon, can you unmute Deanne? There we go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm unmuted. It's a good day. Just to let you know, when I give a quote on interest rates on Monday mornings or afternoons, I look at Mortgage News Daily because that gives us the average rate. And to quote a rate these days is a little bit more complicated than it used to be because there's so many different factors. So what I'm giving you is information that is an average rate between many different banks on what the quote is. So that way it gives you a better idea of really what's out there. 30-year mortgages still running about 7%. There's been an extreme amount of volatility in the market. It continues. So that hasn't changed. Again, we expect that this uneasy feeling is going to continue through April, and then hopefully we're hoping May is going to bring some more stability back into the market. We're looking at 7% interest rates on conforming, 6.5% on VA, FHA, and jumbo. So that's just a basic idea. I'm really excited about the appraisal review we're going to have on Wednesday, and that's going to be at 11 o'clock. I hope that you're all there so you can ask all the questions that you want from the experts. And remember that $500 movement credit for your clients if they close with us. Thanks,
Awesome.
Rochelle.
Thanks, Dan. And thank you for offering the little extra. Sometimes just a little extra helps in a market like this. So we appreciate Movement for offering that to our Best Choice Realty clients. So tonight, welcome, Monday evening, happy Monday. We're going to be talking about pricing tonight. So hopefully you get a few little tips and tricks tonight. We're going to have Shannon get it up on the screen. We're going to use a matrix to go through it, but I do have some slides to go through. We're going to talk about pricing properties to sell. I see a lot of you pricing and using averages and still using some of the AVMs and some of the Zillow estimates to make that price. And what we're finding is that sometimes those are sitting on the market longer than they need to. Or what we're finding is that, we're chasing instead of pricing it to sell. So we do want to spend some time tonight just going over some of the basics, giving you a few tips and tricks of what I would do to make some adjustments. And certainly this is an ongoing conversation. This is one where you might want to reach out and talk to Candace or to Shannon or to myself or some other agent on the team if you're struggling trying to comp something out and get a price for your client. So we're going to talk about that tonight on how to make those adjustments. Let's go right next to the next slide, Shannon. So first off, just an overview, a comparative market analysis, a CMA, is what we're used to doing. It's a tool that many listing agents will use to arrive at a market price. And the accuracy is what a seller is going to be really looking at, how accurate are you in coming up with that? And what kind of data did you use to support that price? It also is a comparative market analysis that many of you, if you're a buyer's agent, should also do. If a property's been sitting on the market for longer than a few months, you may want to do a comparative market analysis for this listing agent to show why you came in with the price that you came in at. So it definitely has a strong influence on how a seller perceives their agent or how a buyer perceives their agent, especially when the market is starting to shift. You really shouldn't do a full CMA for a seller unless you're 95% sure that you are going to get the listing. So make sure that you are doing the work and you're spending the work with the people that are going to be using your services. Don't just do a full CMA, do all of this work that we're talking about, do all the adjustments for you to give that work to, say, somebody else, give it to a seller, and then one of our Best Choice Realty agents goes in and swoops in and is able to take the listing from you. So make sure that you're getting the listing and giving that information only when you're confident you're going to be getting the listing. Let's go to the next slide. There's some very simple steps just to kind of bring you to this point of making the adjustments. Number one, you should have already gone to the tax records to verify that the subject property, the property address, the address, the owner, the amount that they owe on the property, the square footage. Go to the tax records first before you even start doing the adjustments and finding your comparables, just to make sure that you have a base to work from. Number two, then you're going to select the similar neighborhood, similar type of property. You're going to also want to select your comparables with similar objective features. What I mean by objective features would be things that you cannot really change. The square footage is what it is. If it's a single family or a multi-story or a split level, really can't change the type or the level of the type of property that is. It is what it is. That would be objective. The lot size, really can't change that unless there's something on the tax records that says one thing and the seller is telling you another. Maybe they're combining two tax parcels or tax IDs together. You need to understand and verify those tax records with the seller or with the client you're working with. Bedrooms, bathrooms, I've done some where, oh, Rochelle, would you put up a wall, or would you put up would you add another bathroom, or would you convert the basement? Those types of questions. Objectively, though, the bedrooms or the baths or the square footage is all relatively the same. So you're going to be trying to find comparables that match those objective factors. Then number 4, you're going to choose similar amenities within the area of that subject. And then try to select, this is still a struggle right now in some areas, 3 actives, 3 pendings, 3 solds. Try to keep it down to under 5. I saw one CMA last week and they had 8 comparable properties in their solds. And that's just way too many for a seller or a buyer to kind of weed through. So keep it to a minimum and then you will be making the right adjustments. So with actives, some key things to keep in mind. These really are your competition. So you're going to want to look at that like a buyer would look at and be able to make those adjustments because of your local knowledge. So for example, if you found an active comparable that was going on the same side of the street as yours, and it had nicer, newer carpeting, you're going to want to definitely adjust it. Or if that active comparable is overpriced, make sure that you also are making those proper adjustments to that active. Make sure you do the adjustments for actives, pendings, and solds. Don't try to eliminate, oh, I'm only going to make my adjustments to my sold comparables. If you are going to take adjustments, you're going to want to do it on all 3, actives, pendings, and solds. So those are your actives, your active competition. Your sold comparables, you really want to compare the final sales price to the actual sold price to determine the ratios. That's a strategy that many of you might want to consider when you're doing some adjustments. You might have found a sold comparable that was a fantastic sold comparable, but maybe it sold 6 months ago before we had the correction. So you may want to use that and then actually compare and do the adjustments for the market time, as well as the square footage and the other objective factors. So that is something that, again, a more advanced or more intermediate agent would do to their sold comparables, comparing market timeline and making those appropriate adjustments. The pending sales, some tips to think about when you're finding and locating those comparable properties. Since they're pending properties, these are sales that are unknown, that many transactions don't close. I'd say 1 out of 4 right now are not closing for whatever reason. The buyers get cold feet. There was something on the inspection. There's many reasons why pending sales may go back to market. So make note of the days on the market, which may have a direct bearing on how long it will take before you see that close turns into a closed deal. And definitely examine for price reductions. Really look at those pending sales as an indicator of what that final sales price could be or what you could be looking to compare to. I often will call the listing agents on a pending sale and ask them questions about the pending sale so that I can properly make the adjustments to that active listing that will be hitting the market. So pending sales are fantastic. If you have them, build those relationships with those listing agents, and that will also help you in making those adjustments. If you find out there were 12 offers on a place and it escalated by $20,000 or $30,000, you're going to want to make that adjustment when you actually put that comparable or that CMA in front of the seller so they know what's really going on in the marketplace. That's the relevant data that Zillow or that Redfin or some of these online aggregators will not consider. They won't consider the work you're doing to the pending sales or the calls you're making to those cooperative agents. Let's go to the next slide, Shannon. So now we're talking about selecting your comparables, and you want to make sure you're comparing objective factors, and you can make adjustments for, say, bedrooms, bathrooms, garage, let's say your subject has a 3-car garage, but your comparable properties, the ones you're comparing, they do not have a garage that has 3 cars. And so you'll have to make an adjustment. And determining whether yours has it versus the others, you'll be taking a minus or a plus. And you'll go through very systematically on your CMA, and you'll make those appropriate adjustments to the comparable properties. You will not be making it to the subject. You'll be making it to the comparable properties. You will take a plus or a minus depending on whether your subject has what it has or does not have. The age of the home, again, that could be subjective. I'll talk about that in a minute. Lot size, though, definitely you can do an adjustment factor for that. Garage, bedrooms, bath, square footage, there's a factor that you would use to compare. Say one has 4,000 square feet and yours has 3,500 square feet. Just be careful you're not doing not only the bedrooms, bath, and you're also taking it for the square footage. That's a common mistake that I see a lot of you making. So be careful on that. When it comes to subjective factors, now this is like where you go and you get the warm, fuzzy feeling like this is turnkey, carpet's been replaced, it smells nice and pretty with all of the beautiful candles, it's got that curb appeal. Those are subjective factors that an appraiser or a very experienced real estate agent like yourself could make those adjustments to those comparables based on what's subjective. So such as that security and privacy. One has in a gated community versus one that it's not. You definitely want to consider that as a subjective factor or an adjustment that can be made. Amenities such as like one condominium has a pool and has a clubhouse versus one condominium that does not have a pool and a clubhouse. That might be a subjective factor that you can make an adjustment for. Street or curb appeal. You might decide, hey, it's got that Craftsman, really cute with the shutters and like all of this, these nice features. And when you enter the property, where the comparable property doesn't have the cute shutters, it's a really cookie cutter basic house. That would be something you could make an adjustment for subjectively. Just the condition. I've made adjustments for subjective. One had really old, smelly carpet, and mine did not. So that was an adjustment factor of about $10,000. And you can make that adjustment because you've had conversations with other agents where they had to do a flooring allowance or they had to do some sort of paint allowance. Those types of things are considered subjective factors. So a minus of 10,000 or a minus of 8,000 or a minus of 5,000, or in addition, depending on whether your house is the nice one or the one that needs a lot of work, that's some things to consider when you're talking about subjective adjustments. Here are some common objective factors that we adjust. This is also found on our resource website. If you go to bestchoicerealtyhomes.com, you can download this from our download section. And this has been updated as of 2023. So this has been updated based on an appraiser. Again, this is common. This is pretty average. You will have subjects that require maybe some adjustments. This might be some ideas of things you might ask the appraiser on Wednesday. We are going to have a very advanced appraisal management company and an advanced appraiser on our call at 11 o'clock on Wednesday. So if you want to ask some questions that are very, specific, this would be an opportunity to do that. But this is just general things that I see on appraisals that I adjust for when I'm doing a CMA. So for example, if I have a property and the subject has 3 bedrooms and my comparable has 4 bathrooms, I may take an adjustment of $10,000 and adjust my comparable because my subject doesn't have the 4th bathroom. So it had to be a minus $10,000 for a full bathroom. And you say to yourself, well, gosh, Rochelle, it's a lot more expensive than $10,000 to put in a bathroom. I get it. You don't get full value when you add a bathroom. That is just a general common factors of how you do an adjustment when you're doing a CMA. A garage, for example, is anywhere from 5 to 15. That would be per bay. So say I had a 2-car and the subject was a 3-car, I would need to give it a plus. The subjects would need to be plus. I'm sorry, minus. It's late in the day, Shannon. You'll have to correct me if I'm wrong here on the pluses and minuses. We'll get into it so you can see how it's done. But again, you get the idea here. You're making those adjustments. It gives you a range from 3 to 5,000 on a fireplace, kitchen remodels. Again, we have one that's a condominium And the condo, I had we were having a very thoughtful conversation with one of the condos that I've taken over, and she replaced all of her cabinetry. And she thinks that it's worth $30,000, that she could ask that much. And she started way too high, when in reality, just because she replaced her cabinetry, and say the comparable properties that the townhomes that have sold or that have pended, they just painted their cabinetry. She overinflated, she overdid or over improved her property. So she actually does not get the full $30,000 in the kitchen remodel, because the subject, her townhome, doesn't really equate to the similar type of what the market is doing or what the market's willing to bear. So actually the kitchen remodel on that particular example, she was only able to really adjust it by $5,000 in order for her to get offers coming in on her place. Stay out of the repair zone, be very competitive. Make sure if you're comparing like-kind properties, if your adjustments exceed, say, a huge percentage, you probably want to go back to the drawing board and find like-kind properties. For example, I have a Tukwila listing. Patty Anderson knows about it very closely, and we started really high, and the market adjusted and corrected, and we were chasing. Even just like all of you were probably having to do on some of your listings because of the market. But one of the things we had to really get the seller clued in on is that their property needed a lot of work. And so when they're seeing properties that are selling, and they're selling for these desirable prices, that's not the same type of, we shouldn't even be considering that, because it's in a completely different ballgame. So we definitely had to go outside of that particular generic area, a quarter or a half mile. We had to go out and find other as is type properties that needed a lot of work to compare it to. If we would have found another property, say down the street, that was already updated, that had new flooring, that was in turnkey condition, I could do the adjustments for that comparable, but it would be well out of the range of a normal appraiser. An appraiser would typically go find something that was similar or like kind. So you're going to want to watch out of the repair zone and be competitive. Make sure you understand the seller's goals. Do they need a quick sell? Do they need to get top dollar? How much do they owe on it? You want to determine all of that before you really start entering the pricing game. Make sure you position it in the proper price bracket. One of our brokers, Tristan, and I believe one of our top producers, Celeste, they have a really good way of kind of breaking down like pricing as far as, here's what you would be as an as-is pricing, here's if it was fixed up, and here's the amazing price range. Again, that strategy might work for a particular seller. Be very careful about the repair zone and be very competitive in how you price. Let's go to the next slide, Shannon, and then we'll open it up to go over. Keep the seller's mindset in mind. Watch those estimates. The sellers most likely already have a price in mind. So look at whether they say, I think my home will sell for this. Watch for those cues, and be sure to be very quick on your feet, that know your numbers, know what Zillow says, know what Cyber Homes, know what eAppraisal, know what Redfin has got their home priced at, because most likely they're out there looking at what their home is valued at. And you will have to compare, and they're going to want a lot of money, and they think their home is perfect. So keep that in mind and make sure you're giving them real data and explaining why you took the adjustment that you did, why you had to adjust, say, the house down the street that you use as comparable, why you had to adjust that one by $10,000, because they will ask you why you adjusted for that. Let's go to the next slide. Also consider the window of opportunity. If you show this, most CMAs, in fact, the Northwest MLS CMA actually has this available as a handout. I love showing a seller the window of opportunity. It's super important, especially when the market's starting to switch gears, that depending on if you're in a buyer's market, a seller's market, or a more balanced market, it does not matter. The window of opportunity is when you have that first 2 to 4 weeks, and then you start to see less attention, and you have to do a lot more to the marketing and to the property and to the price. Better believe it, because they miss that window of opportunity. So you really want to talk about that with your seller when you're pricing, saying that we don't want to test the market with a high price or close out that window of opportunity. You want to basically make it competitive, and it's the best opportunity they have to get the best price. I don't know about you, but I'd rather have have the price set correctly from the beginning and be at market value than to play chase. That is not a fun place to be. So when you're in the Northwest MLS, you can create a CMA from here, and you also can do your adjustments on Cloud CMA. So I'm going to have Shannon go ahead and go into a Cloud CMA, and you may have to just pull up mine, Shannon. There we go. Yep. Log in, and you can use any of the, I know Idaho has their own CMA feature tucked into their MLS as well, which is really good. I love it. I wish Northwest MLS, this is my little nudge to get the Northwest MLS to get their CMA improved. My goodness, Idaho's got that figured out. They've got it all dialed in like cloud, already embedded into their, they can select their comparables, make the adjustments right there on their MLS. It's a lot prettier of a presentation too. So there's my plug for Northwest MLS to get on it and update the MLS CMA so that you guys can actually have a prettier presentation. You can do the adjustments. It does work and function. It's just clunky and it doesn't look as pretty. That's what I'll say about the MLS, Northwest MLS CMA. So when you're on cloud, Shannon, can you go to cloud? You can see easier how to do the adjustments from here.
It's just having a loading day, I suppose.
Having a loading day, so we might have to just use Matrix to actually show it. If you want to pull up, find some comparables, put them in your cart, and then we'll do some adjustments. We're actually going to go in and there we go. There we go. Find some comparables. Okay. So you definitely want to look at the pictures and make sure you're comparable. This class is not to talk about that. I'm just going to go through and select. So those are 3 actives. And you're going to pick out some ramblers, I'm assuming. Is that right, Shan? Okay. You're gonna go ramblers? Is that what you're gonna do?
Nope. So this house is a 2-story home that we're doing a comparable for. So these ones that I've selected are probably the most similar, just within a half a mile.
Awesome. And I think the house you're thinking about is, what was it, 2,000 square feet or 2,400 square feet?
Yeah, it's about 2,000.
Let's call it 2,400 square feet, the comparable or the subject. Okay, so put those in your cart. And then we'll go ahead and put them into the CMA. Notice that there is a Cloud CMA option right here. Those of you that are using Cloud CMA, you can go right from your cart to Cloud CMA. So that's kind of helpful. There's a little button at the bottom. But since we're having some Cloud CMA trouble, of course we would, on Monday night, we'll go ahead and use the Northwest MLS CMA. So you guys that in Idaho, you can see how archaic this might look to you. Okay, and we're going to just go ahead and adjust these comparables. So you're going to check all of the box, Shannon. Here we go. Click CMA down below. And then this is how you build it through Northwest MLS. You might have to select. So we definitely want to include those. You're going to drag them over. Yeah. The static is what that, if you go to static, Shan, that's that market. You can actually get the pitfalls, the effects of overpricing. There's some nice things you can use there. So it works similar. It's just clunky. There's the subject. There's the comparables. So that we can put in the subject right here. For the interest of time, Shan, don't worry about it. Go to comparables. Okay, and then select them all. Okay. they should be able to go into it's not letting you do the adjustments for some reason. Go back to the beginning.
Yeah,
Michelle, I
just go
think you
back
have
to
to I think you
add
have to have a subject in there.
You have to subject. They won't let you
Think
do
so.
it.
Well,
Okay.
she can just pick another house maybe in the area that's sold, maybe that she's comparing it to. Just pick one of those. You think?
Sure.
Or you can plug
Guys
it
are
in.
helping
the
me out today because we tried.
We'll just use this one as an example.
And I don't think you had adjustments under your pages.
I think that was actually the reason. She's going too fast. She's a
know.
speed demon. There we go. There, now we
Yeah.
got the adjustments.
Okay.
So this one, this little button just really is, click on view in detail mode. It's better up in the right-hand corner. There's what we wanted. So now you can easily make the adjustments right there in the column format. So some of you probably didn't even know that because you haven't taken the CMA class, but you can easily go in and adjust all of the adjustments right from here when you're in this mode. Single line mode should not be the default. So right here, if you have the subject property and we have to make the adjustment to the square footage, so 2,500 square feet, if a subject is 2,500 square feet, we do need to make an adjustment to this one. It's only 1926. So we need to do a math equation. And in Sumner, right now, they're going about $40 a square foot. So that's based on an appraiser. So Shannon, you will take the amount. So you did, tell them what you did to get the 22,000.
Yeah. So the calculation you're doing, so if we're going off of 2,500 square feet is our subject property, those 2,500 square feet minus what is on the comparable property, which is in this case is 1926. And then whatever number you end up with times it by your adjustment factor, which we're using 40 as our adjustment, which gets us to, I think you said, was it 40?
Yeah, $40 a square foot. Correct.
Okay, so I guess it's roughly around $23,000, right?
Yep. And so that would be a plus because my subject is larger. It's better than the comparable. So we're making the adjustment to the comparable property by $23,000. Now our lot size is almost identical, same neighborhood, everything's good there. So let's say that our garage was a 3-car garage and theirs is just a 2-car garage. So we would add 5,000 for that. So we get a $5,000 bump. Okay. And let's say that ours needs a carpet replacement, but sellers don't want to do it. They're just like, Rochelle, just get on the market. We just want to do a $10,000 credit. So that would be a minus. That would be a subjective. So up above, square footage, bedrooms, baths, garage, those are all objective factors that you can make adjustments to. Floor coverings, how it feels, how it walks, maybe even, the street appeal, like I told you guys earlier, views, definitely those are all subjective factors. So if we need to make an adjustment because ours had a mountain view or ours did not have a mountain view, that could be potentially, it could be 20,000 minus $20,000 because ours does not have a view. That is very common to see those types of adjustments. So when you get an opportunity to talk with an appraiser, and you ask them questions about adjustments, that's the kind of things that I love to have banter with an appraiser is, hey, I'm appraising this one that has an Airbnb, can you adjust more for that? Or can you, those are the types of questions that always gets me excited is how they're making those adjustments or how they're making those factual changes to their analysis. So then when you get down to the bottom, then you go to the next and you go to the next property. So square footage, again, you take that multiplier and then see, this is 8516. I mean, it's not that much difference. So if it's only like 50 or 100 square feet, sometimes it doesn't make sense to do it, but 100 square feet, it gives you a 10 by 10 room. So I'd say if it's bigger than 100 square feet, definitely do the adjustment. Okay. Condition, where I put the condition would be building condition. It says very good. If you're doing a subjective adjustment, that's a great place to put it on the MLS CMA. So sometimes you're having to make these things up. You also can go in and add additional criteria on the left, but when I'm trying to get this done as quickly as possible, you could make your notes right there. But at the end of the day, you're looking for that adjusted price down below, Shannon, that $597,360. That would be what will be averaged. So after you take those adjustments, then those 3 sold comparables and the penny and the active will all be averaged to give you a price range. And you want that price range to be realistic. You don't want to have it be a couple $100,000 off. You want to really have a nice, crisp range that you're working with. Okay. And then you click finish once you're done with adjustments. And then it's going to put it into a package, which, like I said, you'll see how kind of old school this looks in comparison to some of the new tools that are out there for putting CMAs together. There you go. Northwest MLS needs a little bit of work there. I mean, it does put the raw data, it does put your information on there, and it gives you the 1 line and the 2 line and all of that fun stuff. But if you're going to go all the way down, show them the comparable, that's the adjustments that your sellers really are clued into looking at. What did it sell for? What is my subject? And how did you adjust to come up with the valuation that you're coming up with? So those are probably the most important sheets if you are using the MLS CMA, those adjustment sheets, and then probably the summary page that talks about the square footage. Keep going down, Shannon. Those ones right there. Talks about the current days on market, CDOM. They really don't understand what CDOM is. You have to kind of go through that with them. And then the sale price percent LP. They don't understand some of these types of lingo. So you have to explain to them that all 3 of those sold comparable properties, they got close to what they were asking. One at 93.6%, 100.36%, and the other one at 98%. So we want to price your home at a good price, at a market price. And all 3 of those sold comparables, albeit the 93% was a little bit of a stretch there. The other 2 sold very close to asking. So they actually priced to sell would be the reason. The 93.6, there was some negotiation that was involved and perhaps a price that they've chased when they were doing that one. Okay, so you want to be careful about you don't want to give them too much information, but you definitely want to show your comparable properties and how you adjusted them. Candace, do you want to step in?
I'll pipe in if you're good with that, Rochelle. So I think the key is just making sure that you're consistent with all the adjustments for all the properties. I know I've reviewed several CMAs in the last month for many of our agents, and I think that's one of the things that I've seen a lot of people do wrong. Another thing I would say is also just the range is too big. When you're pulling those CMAs and you've got $100,000 discrepancy, somehow we've got to tighten that up a little bit. Can we maybe go out a little bit further? Is there maybe a little bit further in time to find a better comparable property that we can use and do a market adjustment off of that to tighten that window a little bit? Right now, I think Candace can speak to this too a little bit in terms of the market adjustment we're seeing on CMAs. But if you're having to go back further, I mean, for those that have been licensed since before September, the market has changed. We are in a completely different market than we were back in July. So if you're using comparables from back then, if you have to, making sure that you do a market adjustment for those in those time period, I think is critical right now. Candace, I think you were telling me it's about 15%, right?
So between 10 and 15%, over the recent years. And I've talked to a lot of agents where that has come into play and it's been very helpful. So it's like, go back a couple of years back, a lot of us are dealing with sellers that maybe purchased in like 2018 and looking at a reasonable number between 10 to 15% increase over the last 5 years. And a lot of times what will happen is that number that, maybe the seller might have in their head is off by quite a bit based on continuous having the market increase of on the upwards of 20%, right? So I don't know if this is making sense how I'm explaining, But the last 2 years, we were seeing increases 18 to 20% year over year. That we kind of got to go back those last 2 years and correct. And what we're seeing, those numbers are about 10 to 15%.
Yep. And I would echo that incredibly. I know that for some people, I've had some tricky CMAs recently too that some of our agents have been doing, which is great. I will bring it on, guys. Challenge me. But one of them was dealing with a view. So how do you deal for the view adjustments and things like that? And this one strategy that I learned from Rochelle many years back was to look at this particular property. It worked well for because it was a new in the last 20 years. So you can see when it was built because it was in the MLS history, and seeing what a similar property with that same floor plan was selling for that did not have the view, and seeing what the builder did for the adjustment value. So knowing what that is, now we can do the adjustment factor for that view based off of what the builder did back then. So that's kind of a cool little trick to use. Views are difficult, I will say, just because some views are more value than other. I know we had one, I think a couple of years, I think it was last year, Rochelle, in Bellevue, where we're talking about a view this direction versus a view that was this direction, and how that all kind of worked out over in Bellevue for the view of the water, and the value was different. People were willing to pay more for this view rather than the wedge view. So let us know if you've got something tricky that comes up like that, but it's best to do the adjustment as best you can. You'd be surprised the number of CMAs that we see that do not have adjustment factors at all.
I know. We are actually seeing more agents from other companies that are just throwing a number out there, or have been. They've not been taught to do it. And I think just spending a little bit of time practicing, because it will show that you're the knowledgeable person. If you were going up against, say, another agent that did not do the adjustments, most likely you would win. It was interesting because I went up, this was about a year ago. So we were in the thick of things, and I was up against another, we won't give any names, but I would say he's the king of Edgewood. I would say he's the king of Edgewood. And I went in there and I was like, I want to be the queen of Edgewood. So I went into the appointment, and he had already done his full CMA. But it was interesting because they gave the CMA. So the seller actually pulled it out of the drawer in the kitchen and said, Rochelle, hey, he already came out. The king of Edgewood has already come out to look at this place. So what is the queen going to bring me? And so I had my CMA, and of course I did not give him my CMA because I said, as long as once you sign the paperwork, then I'll give you all my work. But I put a ton of time into my analysis. I had done my adjustments. I had toured my pendings. I had contacted all my pendings. I had looked at the actives. So I knew what was going on in that particular area of Edgewood. So when he signed the agreement, I gave him my CMA. He goes, do you want to go see what the king gave me? And I go, absolutely, break it out. So he brings it out. I'd already taken the listing. I already got, the numbers. And he goes, the king of Edgewood was actually going to sell my place for $40,000 less, because all they did was take the Zestimate and do some analysis, and didn't take into consideration the addition that he did on his property and the extra garage and some extra things that they'd done to the property. So $40,000 was all it took, but it was kind of fun to banter. But I looked to see what the king of Edgewood did. And it was funny because the king of Edgewood had one of his assistants throw together one of those CMAs that you can get, those, they pop in it was like a quick and dirty, I would say. He used Cloud CMA. So I used Cloud CMA, and so did the king of Edgewood. We both used the same tool. It was just what we put into that tool and the time that I took to actually go over that with the seller on how I did the adjustments was better than the quick and dirty. So be careful if you do the quick and dirty with those CMAs, because those algorithms, they're not going to calculate correctly, or they're going to miss something, or the square footage, or just the conditional adjustments that you can make because you actually spent the time asking the questions. So yeah, that seller is going to be a seller for life. He moved to, I think, over Eastern Washington, somewhere over there. So maybe I'll get him on the Idaho side, sell him an investment property. But yeah, King of Edgewood got dethroned for the day. That was the end of that story. So
yeah,
thanks,
Queen trumps king. I love that comment, Deanne. Checkmate, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Fun. Well, hopefully that was helpful. You picked up a few tips. I don't know, Candace, that was, there's a lot to cover, certainly with pricing. So I know
And
you
I
guys
would
are talking
also
about it.
say when you all are soliciting assistance for, just kind of to double check CMAs, I appreciate those that are giving kind of what you've come up with, but there are some properties where there's no, I haven't seen it. So just to kind of know the condition it's in, if there's been any updates, the properties that I can't see and you're asking me to assist with analysis, be sure to send something, a little more information as to, what type of property, if it's something that's not going to be found on the MLS, where I can actually see some recent photos.
Yeah. And this is where we can add value, right? I mean, Redfin and Zillow, they're not going through the house, and you guys sure are. Or you've been there or visited with that agent or that client and talked to them about their property, and ask them about the upgrades that they've put in. Well, let's give them credit for it in your CMA, right? Let's make sure that they get that value in that market proposal you're putting together for them. They would love to see it. They like to see what the return on their investment was for putting in that bathroom or putting in the flooring. It makes a big deal for them. I mean, that's their equity, and we're protecting it in that way.
Great. Awesome, you guys have a great week. We'll catch up with next Monday. We're going to have a guest speaker. I think you'll be very happy. I've got somebody that's going to be jumping on Monday night to go over some best tips and tricks for doing some really cool open houses and some things like that. So I like outside the box. So we have a guest speaker next Monday. It's one of a Best Choice Realty agent. So jump on next Monday. And certainly if you guys have questions about pricing, Wednesday morning, 11 a.m., we'll see you guys there.
Yeah, we'll send everybody the link for Wednesday as well. It's the same Zoom link as tonight, but it'll be on Wednesday with CM. So we'll send out that. Just make sure you tune in for that on Wednesday. See you guys then.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks, you guys.